Okay, so Katelyn, what drove you to sign up for a 100-mile race?
That's actually a really good first question because it was definitely not to run 100 miles again. I had run I've run a couple of 100 milers, but around a decade ago. And I swore after my second one that I would never, ever, ever run 100 miles again. And don't take this the wrong way because we'll get into why I did enjoy it and why I may do it again. But I swore that I wouldn't. So what happened is that, Victor and I, we have a running club here in Costa Rica, Treinta Grados Trail Running. And there was a nice group of people, about
Hmm.
8 of our team, and they wanted to run a 100-miler. And most of them were going to run it for the first time. And I was like, oh, big groups going. And
Hmm.
I started to feel like big groups going, that would be really cool to spend that time with them, to kind of share that experience with them. And then my running partner, Jonathan, who you know, he was one of those people. And he said, let's make a deal. I was like, a deal? What do you mean a deal? He said, I'll pace you in Boston if you help me through my first 100-miler. And I said, whoa, whoa, whoa,
Oof.
whoa, whoa. That seems a little, there's a little bit of a time difference there of hours running. But I said, you know what? Okay, let's do it. Let's shake on it. Let's do
Okay.
it. Yeah. So I signed up mostly to kind of be with the group, go through the experience with them as they're all running their first 100-miler.
And how much did you know about this specific 100-miler when you committed?
Yeah. Well, I did not look into it as much as I should have. Let me just put it that way. One of the guys in our group, one of our friends, Manu, he was like, "All right, I've got this great 100-miler in Colorado. It's going to be super fun. It's in Steamboat Springs. It's going to be beautiful. Let's go." And everyone just kind of goes, "Yeah, yeah, 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 yeah. Let's go, let's go,
Yeah.
let's go." So we all sign up and then we really start going into it. So don't do this at home, folks. Research your 100-miler before you
Mm.
go. So for a first 100-miler, for a lot of these guys, there were a lot of really fun obstacles. That was part of it. And so we didn't really go into a lot of the details before we signed up, and then started going into the details after, and had to switch some training around and really prepare for all the huge obstacles at running it.
Right.
10,500 feet.
Yeah, because that's officially high altitude, right? If you look at people who train for high altitude, that classes as an altitude at which you should specifically train for.
Yeah, it was. We did spend quite a bit of time up at 10,000, over 10,000 feet, which is like 3,300 meters of altitude. And
Hmm.
when we came back down, because it started in a ski resort, and so we would go up and down, and we would like go up and like a vertical kilometer in probably 10K. So we would go
Okay.
up 1,000 meters. So still, when we were at base level, we were still at over 2,000 meters. It felt like, for the most part. So we were always kind of running at high altitude throughout the entire race, to be
Yeah.
honest.
So we should say the race is the Run Rabbit Run 100-miler. It's in Colorado. It's got, what did I read again? In terms of elevation, like 22,000 feet of elevation across the 100 miles.
Yep.
It takes place across a pretty crazy altitude range, but basically at altitude. So I'm curious, you mentioned you did 200-milers like 10 years ago. Were they, how does this course compare to those?
Yeah, when I ran my first 100-miler, I ran the Vermont 100, which is actually part of the Grand Slam. But the Vermont 100 was, it's in New England,
Hmm.
and it wasn't at very high altitude, and it was very, very different from the race in Colorado. This one was, on the other hand, I felt Vermont was much more runnable. Vermont, a very interesting thing about that race is that it's still also a horse race. So the conditions have to be appropriate for the horse race as well as the on foot race.
Okay, so no, I don't know what a horse couldn't do, scale a rock scree or something like that. Pretty
Right.
runnable.
Yeah, like and actually it's funny that you mentioned that, because in this race in Steamboat Springs, we ran on a rock line on over very big rocks. That was actually one of the trickiest sections because we hit it at night and we had to kind of navigate in the dark around these big rocky sections without kind of like a very clear path. And in Vermont, I felt like, the paths were very clear. It was very easy to follow, a lot of nice open roads. The second one I ran was called the Tark 100. And the reason why I did that is because it was very close. It was like maybe 15 minutes from where my family lives in Massachusetts. And so I went there to run it so they could see me, so I could visit them. And that was 4 loops of
Okay.
40K. It was 4 loops, and it was around this gorgeous park. And so both of these races, they were not at altitude. They did not have kind of that trickiness that Run Rabbit Run had, thinking about the trails and stuff.
Yeah, that's if I ever consider doing a 100-miler, which who knows, that would be like the total limit of the most I would ever want to run at one time. I would definitely, like, criteria would be the flattest thing possible. So I'm intrigued to dig into how this one went.
Yeah, and it's funny, Thomas, because if you think about choosing the flattest one possible, that also has a lot of obstacles. That's really challenging because, at least for me, when I think that we have elevation gain and elevation loss, I think about, okay, if I have elevation gain, I have an excuse to walk on the uphills. I have a very good excuse to walk on the uphills. But if you choose a very flat 100-miler, you may feel like I should be running this whole thing,
Yeah,
and that's a
fair.
whole nother ball game. That's a really tough thing to do.
Okay, so let's see. When did you finally do your research and realize what a mission this race was, and when did you start training specifically for this one?
So pretty much after Boston in April, I took, a few weeks off, and then I said, all right, well, it's time to start. It's time to get going. And it was actually great because I did the Boston training. So I felt like I had my speed up, and now it was like, okay, now it's a lot of endurance stuff. We continue with speed as well, but we really try to focus on long runs and back-to-backs, running on tired legs, getting the volume in, and just basically practicing and dress rehearsals on the long runs for what the race could be. Now, that you don't run 75, 80, 90% of the mileage in a long run for the 100-miler beforehand. So it's also a lot. It's a lot of weekly mileage. It's what you do throughout the week that adds up, that makes you work and build that endurance to run a 100-miler, because you're not going to do 100K every other weekend for your long runs. But yeah, so I basically from May until September, I took that block to really build up for Run Rabbit Run.
And what kind of weekly mileage were you hitting at your peak?
We at my peak, I was at about 140 kilometers.
Okay.
So maybe a little less than 100 miles. I know that there are people that do more mileage. For me, this was the first block in all of my years of running, competitive running, recreational running, that I've ever done so much mileage. And yeah, I think that's a kind of an interesting point actually to chat about, because thinking about mileage, I don't feel like you need to run the monster mileage to do a good job, in a 100-miler. This time around, I ran more mileage than ever. That was my peak week. Most of the weeks were between like 100, 125 kilometers. Okay. About that. But that's after, I have been running, for about 12, 14 years, all of these endurance races. So I built up to this over time. It's not that I've always run this much mileage.
And I guess that's in miles, I guess that's like 60, 70, 80-mile weeks, usually peaking maybe.
Yeah, like about
100.
80 miles. Yeah, about 80-mile weeks.
But I guess
80
maybe
to 90.
You can make an argument here that okay, so weekly mileage would be the most relevant metric to look at for normal races. But for a race like this, you maybe want to just focus on volume or time on feet or volume in relevant terrain.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm mentioning the mileage because you asked me about mileage, and that's what I know on Strava ended up being my weekly totals, but my training was not in mileage.
Hmm.
My training was in time. My long run training was always in time because, as trail runners and as ultra runners, we don't know what terrain we're going to hit when we go out on our runs. Sometimes the long run that I've chosen for the weekend has a lot of elevation gain, so the mileage is going to be a lot lower than it would if I'm running something a bit flatter.
Yeah.
Or if the trails are super technical, then I'm going to have to go a lot slower. And so yes, the mileage worked out to that, but we worked in hours. I worked in mileage during the week while I was doing road running. And then on Fridays and Saturdays when I did my long runs, that was all based on time. So I think like our longest long runs, I think it went up to we had a 7-hour longest run and then a 2-hour run the next day. So I think somewhere adding up to about 9 to 10 hours in a weekend was the most we did.
And I'm just thinking, were you specifically doing those long runs going up to the mountains in Costa Rica to mimic the terrain? Was that the idea?
Yeah, we did. And actually, a lot of these long runs, we did go up to altitude because in Costa Rica, we have tons of mountains. And I know this is going to sound like a shock to a lot of people, but I actually have a cabin in this place. I've mentioned it on the podcast before. It's called Cerro de la Muerte because Michael always laughs because it's the peak of death or death's peak. And so we're up there at a little over 2,000 meters. So
Okay.
yeah, so it's not as extreme as the race was, but we were doing a lot of long runs up there. So we were practicing at least. You can't get used to running at altitude if you keep going up and down, but you at least know how it's going to affect you. So you say, okay, I'm going to have these symptoms or I'm going to feel like this when I'm running the race because altitude affects me in that way. So I wanted us to all kind of feel, know what we were going to feel up at altitude. So we did a lot of runs at altitude.
Yeah, so that's actually, I never realized that. So that's actually, the weekends you're going to almost the same altitude as the race, which would have been pretty helpful because I'm guessing when you went to the race, did you arrive a few days early to acclimatize or were you straight into it?
That's a tricky thing about altitude because if you really want to acclimatize, what I understand is that you either have to get there really early, like weeks early, or the day before. Right?
Yeah,
that's
jump
like
in
your window.
before the dip hits you. It's something like that, right? Yeah.
That's exactly right. So I was like, okay, well, I can't do either. It's going to be the worst possible scenario. Like we're going to get there 4 days before.
Okay.
we start the race and we're at our absolute worst as with the altitude. But you know what? I was banking on the fact of all the research that Brady has gone over about the heat training.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was like, okay, Brady, I really like this information because we're here in Costa Rica training in the heat and the humidity. And I know that he mentioned a bunch of times that there have been a lot of studies that show that heat training can also mimic altitude training and that you can reap some of the same benefits. So I was kind of jumping on that thinking, okay, guys, well, if we're training in the heat and the humidity, that's also hopefully going to help us once we get to Steamboat Springs.
And I'm jumping everywhere, right? But do you find, like, you train in Costa Rica all the time? We've talked about this a lot before because I used to live in Asia and sometimes I would travel to Europe for races and I would just psychologically find the conditions just felt much easier. Do you find that when you went to Colorado, just being in a cooler environment, you kind of hit the ground running?
Yeah, when I feel it more when I go like to Boston to visit my dad and it's cool and we're at sea level. That feels really comfortable. And actually when I run there and I train there, I just start going and I look down at my watch and I'm like, wow, this is a much faster pace than I'm used to. When we got to Steamboat Springs, even though it was cooler and during the day it was quite warm. It was sunny and it got hot. I was actually all bundled up to run like a shakeout run for the couple of days before, and I definitely brought the wrong clothes because the mornings were warm and very sunny. And I didn't. The first time we went out for a run, I was like, oh, I feel that in my breathing. I feel it. So I actually already felt that it was kind of affecting me, that the altitude was affecting me a couple days before the race. So, but yeah, if I go over to a cool climate and we're close to sea level, I feel like I'm flying.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you kind of describe the setup of this race, the format? Because I'm looking at their website and it's typical trail territory where the language is pretty, you know, all over the place, pretty informal. Seems like a lot of fun. But what's the organization like? What's the check-in procedure like? What's the safety briefings and things like?
Yeah, it was very informal, but it was really fun. It was just like that, what you expect of that small town trail community environment where everyone's just super excited to go. I think what happens is I feel like a lot of these runners are repeat runners to this
Yeah.
race. So, and there were actually, it was very funny because they did podcasts and they did interviews and we heard ourselves mentioned a bunch like, yeah, there's this group and I don't know why they chose Steamboat Springs and came up from Costa Rica, but somehow we're on the map, guys. they were they were kind of trying to figure out why this group from Costa Rica came up to Run Rabbit Run as our destination race, because it was kind of small town. We did have like over 400 people in the race,
Okay.
in this 100-miler, but I feel like a lot of people were repeats. So we got there, and a lot of people, it felt like they knew each other, and maybe kind of assumed that everyone knew what was going on. So we had to ask a lot of questions, and they were going to stream a live of the of like the pre-race chat. And so, we all had the link and we were, sitting down to our pasta dinner and it never appeared. I don't know what happened. Something happened with the tech, I'm sure. So we had read the runner's manual over and over and over again. I mean, we were very prepared. They had even like step-by-step instructions. If you wanted to, I don't know if you remember, Thomas, do you remember MapQuest?
No.
Like, no. Okay. You know why?
Oh,
You're also too
like
young.
it's like Runkeeper, but for everybody, right? Like an early Google Maps.
Exactly. So it's like you used to print out your driving instructions.
Yeah. Okay, got
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
You're too young. You're too young. You don't remember. When I started driving, we like would
You're not going to tell me
would
the
type-
route for this race is on MapQuest still, are you?
Yeah. No. But I felt like it was that kind of I felt like
That
it was that
level of
kind of a
tech.
situation. Yeah. Because they said, okay, print it out
Yep.
and carry it with you. And I was like, whoa, I haven't heard this in a really long time. So there were step-by-step instructions. I went over them. I looked at the important intersections, and they did have a GPX file also for your watch. We'll get to that later.
Okay.
And so all of that was clear. So the fare was great before they took photos. You got your T-shirt, you picked up your bib, took a lot of pictures. It was right at the base of the ski lift, which is really fun. And so yeah, it had like that great hometown feel. Like we showed up the next morning at the start, and we're all there bundled up, the whole group from Costa Rica, ready to go an hour before the race, and we're like, oh, we think we have the wrong spot. So one of our friends asked one of the people that she saw milling around, and we're like, where's the start line? Like, oh, it's here. Like, oh, okay. So there's just no like start line, or like, you usually have like an arch or something that you go through.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, it's coming.
Okay.
It'll be. So they literally blew it up like 10 minutes before the start. It was very, I took this like very well. I thought it was endearing. I thought it was like this great small town feeling. And I love running races like that. So I
sounds
just
like a lot of
love
fun.
the feeling. Yeah, it was fun.
If nothing else, it probably somehow takes any pressure or anxiety you're feeling about the race. It probably reduces it when the surroundings are so informal.
Yeah, exactly. It was really nice. It did. It like melted the stress away.
Okay, tell me about. Oh, first, but I was going to ask about support, but first, when you sign up for this race, is there a mandatory equipment list? What kind of safety stuff? Like, just as somebody who is used to running road races these days, what kind of extra weird stuff do you get when you actually, are preparing for a 100-miler?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And even if they don't have a mandatory list, because this race, because it was a little on the informal side, it was just like suggested. But I took everything suggested should definitely be mandatory. It should be in your pack. I looked like a ninja turtle with my pack when I started. It was so stuffed, but it was absolutely necessary. So things that you absolutely need, you're going to be running through the night. So you need a headlamp, all the changes in batteries. I had to take 3 different sets of batteries plus an extra headlamp. So that's just to be able to navigate at night. The weather could get very cold at night because we were at altitude, and so we had to take extra layers, and I took a waterproof jacket and waterproof pants and needed everything, which we'll get to. Gloves, something to cover my ears, a hat. Then you've got to think about your nutrition. So you got to pack your nutrition, but that's normal in most races. Carry an emergency blanket in case something goes wrong, in case you get stuck in an aid station and you're going to, and you're going to DNF, or you get really cold or you get wet, and one of those tiny little emergency blankets, you just take it out and they warm you up really well. So that's something you want to take. Nowadays, most races ask you to take a smartphone along with you, which I'm not a super fan of, but I completely understand that it's a safety thing, and I'm actually glad that I took it. So you want to take your phone with you in case of an emergency. That's something else that you want to make sure you have. You usually want to take what else could it be? I think that's pretty much, that's a lot of stuff. My bag was absolutely stuffed. So you want to make sure that you have all the emergency stuff just in case if you're running a cold race. You want to make sure that you can get dry and get warm.
And then, am I right in saying you had drop bags? Tell me about drop bags and what you put in them and where they were.
Yeah. So usually in 100-mile races, you get at least 1 drop bag. In this case, we were able to have 2, and we passed each of those checkpoints twice. So if you really wanted to, you could go buy your stuff 4 times, which was really convenient. I did not leave a drop bag at the 40 kilometer mark. I left it it was going to be the 80 and the 100, which was it was like the biggest one. It was at the base of one of the ski lifts. It was a really nice big room, bathrooms, drop bags. So like inside a nice building. So I left my drop bag there. And I have run a lot of ultras, and I have left a drop bag for emergency situations with a complete change of clothes, another pair of sneakers, stuff for my feet, all my nutrition, just absolutely everything you could possibly imagine. Almost have never, ever, ever stopped once, haven't needed it. This race, I needed it all. I needed it all. So I'm so glad I left it and that it was stocked up.
Right. Okay. We're getting close to how your race experience was. Okay. So we're good. I just want to set the scene for everybody because I've got a bit of experience running ultras, but a lot of people listening to this don't. And I think this is the interesting stuff for people who are like, how do these weird things work where you actually just start running and don't stop till you've covered 100 miles, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's your drop bags. Then I guess the last question I've got is aid stations and other support. What do they look like? What do they provide? How frequent are they?
Yeah, that's definitely going to vary from race to race. This race, it had wonderful, fully stocked aid stations with incredible volunteers. Like, you want good energy, you want to feel pumped up, just get to one of those aid stations and you had people, cheering for you, yelling at you, taking off your pack, filling up your water, asking you what you need. I was helped twice by Scott Jurek, who helped me with all of my stuff at the aid stations. He is absolutely amazing. For those of you who don't know, Scott Jurek is a legend.
Yeah.
Oh, completely. I came back through the second time on his aid station on the way back. It had been through the night. It was the next morning. He was still there. And, he remembered me. He was so very sweet. He said, I was really hoping that no spoiler alert, we'll talk about it later. I was really hoping that hailstorm didn't push you out of the race. I was like, nope, I'm here. I made it. I'm ready to get to the finish line. So it was an absolute, the volunteers were incredible. All of the volunteers were incredible at the aid stations. Now, the aid stations, depending on how fast you're cruising through this race, some of the aid stations may have felt a little far apart, just because, if you're dragging at the end of the race, 10 or 12 miles, can feel like that can
Yeah.
be a really long time. That can be a lot of hours. So it can be, a few hours, up to 4 hours if for some reason you have to walk it all.
Yeah.
You got cold or something's bothering you. So what you always have to make sure you do in all of the ultras is just you have to fill up. You
Yeah.
you can't you can't think, oh, my bag's going to feel heavier and you have to think, no, my safety comes first and I have to
Yeah.
be prepared. So if what you do before these races is you study where the aid stations are and you study how far apart they are. And some of them will be closer because we did have some that were like 5 miles apart and they came up super quick and we didn't have to refill as much. But when you've got, 10, 12 miles in between an aid station, you say, okay, I've got to leave this aid station like full of hydration and nutrition just in case, because it may take me a while to get to the next one.
Okay. And last question before we move into the race is, how much did you rely on the aid station nutrition, and how much did you take your own stuff? Like stuff you trained with, stuff you knew worked for you?
I brought everything I needed to start and finish the race on my own nutrition. But as you know, Thomas, that is not always the case. And being an ultra trail runner, 100-mile runner, is all about adaptability. And so I had to kind of forego my initial plan after about kilometer 40. And I relied on the aid stations for the rest of the race. So thank goodness they were amazingly stocked because I had to kind of switch gears for my nutrition for the rest of the race.
But I think we're getting really close, but I think that's a good strategy. You turn up basically self-sufficient if needed, and you know that there's stuff there, but the stuff that you've trained with certain stuff and it's a conservative approach, which I think is the right one. Okay, so getting into strategy just before we actually kick off the race itself. You knew you were going to run with Jonathan. You guys had studied the course map by this point. Going into it, did you have a specific pace strategy? Did you have strategic places you thought you would maybe stop? What were you saying to each other at the start line?
Okay, well, we planned on, when you're running any distance for the first time, especially in trail running, I think it's super important for you to say, I just want to finish. The only reason why you kind of think about time is just so you can prepare yourself with nutrition and hydration. So you can kind of make a little bit of a guess, but it's really hard. It's so unpredictable. So we just said we're going to take it aid station to aid station. This was Jonathan's first 100-miler, and we're just going to take our time, be patient, and be really smart about our running, and just stop. I think the only aid stations we didn't stop at were like the first two, because it's a beautiful day. The weather is still really nice, and we filled our packs. Maybe runners who are going in there a little bit more competitively, like when I'm running more competitively, I strategize and I say, I'm just going to go with a handheld of water. And then once I get to the third aid station, I'm going to fill my pack, so I can go up the hill lighter, for example, because this race started on a 10-kilometer uphill and 1,000 meters of elevation gain. So it was just like going up the ski slope. So my mindset for Run Rabbit Run was to be patient, to have a really great race, to do as well as we could. But I wasn't thinking strategy like competition. I was thinking strategy. Let's have a really good race. And not risk anything. So we started out full. We had hydration. We had our Propel in the bladders. We had our nutrition for the first half of the race on us. And we were just ready to go. And we said, okay, let's start out. Let's make sure that we don't get too, we're not breathing too hard. The first hill is obviously going to be tough. We're going to hike it. Everyone hiked it. I didn't see anyone run this hill. It was a bear. So let's just hike it.
I was just going to ask what the field looked like at the start. If people took off, or if everybody was playing the conservative card.
Yeah, I really do feel like everyone was playing the conservative card. Everyone was hiking, power hiking up the hill.
Yeah.
And so we were just in this one really long line. We did have the strategy, however, because it was going to be single track and about 800 meters. So we did have the strategy to jog the whole uphill on the road to be able to get into a really nice place for the single track, because, we're strong hikers. We hike a lot in Costa Rica, so it's kind of one of our fortes. And so we thought, well, we just want to kind of comfortably hike with everyone and not, not maybe be stopping. But I saw that everyone was just, like nice and fluidly going up that hill, hiking up that hill. And so everyone kind of took it in stride. Everyone was hiking well, but I didn't see anybody running up that hill.
Yeah.
At least not where I was.
So when you left the start line, you didn't have any time goals, but did you have a vague sense of how long you thought it would take, or did you just leave it open?
When I spoke with Jonathan and we looked at, the complexity of the race, we said, okay, well, you know what? Let's plan on 30 hours.
Yeah.
And if we do 24, 26, 28, because I feel like we were in fitness at a 100-miler that maybe didn't present the obstacles that this 100-miler presented, I feel like we were in 24 hours, sub 24 hour shape for sure. But since this race might have caused us some issues, and then some unexpected issues came up, I think we were planning on around 30 hours, which we saw was actually at Run Rabbit. If you run under 30 hours, you get this like special gold buckle, which is right back here.
There you go. I was gonna say
on my shelf.
There's like the gold buckle cutoff, and then is there another cutoff before the actual proper cutoff? Like you've gone too slow, you're out the race.
Yeah, there was a cutoff. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what the time was. Some races that are really tough are 42 hours, some are 36. But yeah, there is a time where you do kind of have to DNF out of or you don't get the buckle because you don't finish within the time limits. But there was like a special buckle if you finish in under 30 hours. I did not know this until after the race, until they presented us with the buckle. But it was a very cool surprise to know that this was an extremely tough race. And so the time, if we did under 30, that was going to be a really good time. So that was our rough idea, somewhere between maybe 20, 28 and 30 hours, because we knew it was going to be tough.
Okay. So when did things deviate from the kind of smooth sailing plan that you guys set off with? When was the first hurdle?
Yeah, we our first hurdle was actually something that we are blaming ourselves for. Our first hurdle came about, I think, kilometer 40 or 50 when we were both just like we had unsettled stomachs with our gels, and these are gels that we have taken forever. I've been competing with these gels forever. And I think that part of it is perhaps in those long runs, when you're training for ultras and you're doing these long runs, your body just goes on autopilot. And sometimes you don't always practice the nutrition as on point as you need to. Like you're not taking a gel every single 30 minutes for every easy long run that you're doing. And I think that, this is a big lesson that we learned, that it doesn't matter how comfortable we are running, that it's not even about on the long runs, having energy for the long runs. It's about training our guts better to handle the gels. And so I think that that's kind of where we said, okay, well, that's okay. Plan B. The only things that we wanted to do were eat like mini quarter grilled cheese sandwiches or quesadillas, or once we were getting to the aid stations, we were like snacking on real food items. And I think that is a bit of a problem because it's very difficult snacking on real food to get the number of carbs or the number of calories that you need to really keep yourself going between aid station to aid station. I think that was a big challenge, that we probably didn't eat enough.
A couple of thoughts. Well, first, what the nutrition strategy did you have in terms of, were you going full David Roach 5 gels an hour, or what was the plan?
We were trying to take about 60 between. I was probably trying to take about 2 gels an hour plus something else. So we were probably trying to take about 60 grams of carbs an hour. So no, we were not doing the 5 gel thing. We were like, okay, if we take 1 gel every half an hour and then snack on some other stuff, we'll get up to 60 grams an hour. So I was taking, I love the power bar gels, the power gels, green apple ones. So I was
Yep.
taking one of those every 30 minutes, and usually they work perfectly fine. And so after a bunch of hours, I just think that, your system is like, can you try something else? Like, it's been a really long time that you're taking these gels. So yeah, we weren't overdoing it on the carbs. We were just trying to be really consistent about it. And our stomachs just kind of failed us a little bit, and we couldn't really get sports nutrition down that easily after about the 50K mark.
This is maybe a dead end, but was the temperature much colder than the temperature you usually train at? I'm just wondering if there was something with thermoregulation in your body, like you're used to training in tropical environments, then you go into cold weather. Maybe your body was prompting you for real food. It's something that happens.
Oh, that absolutely could have been, because you know what? When we kind of started to have those issues, it was getting later in the day, and so the sun was now in, and the rain had started, which is a really great part of the story. And we were getting very, very cold, and that's actually when our stomachs also started to bother us. So perhaps we can't blame just the nutrition. And I mean, we were still moving along, we were still going, we were fine. The thing is that we needed to change our nutrition plan and adapt it to the aid stations. Yeah. So
then,
it just kind of threw a wrench in the works.
So then that affected your performance for the rest of the race. Would you say that you slow you down, or did you feel you adapted?
Yeah, it slowed us down a little bit, but we were able to keep pushing through. We were just really tough about it. We just kept pushing through. We just ate when we could. When we got to the aid stations, we made sure we ate. We ate a lot of broth, like noodle soup. Oh my gosh, it was so delicious. It tasted amazing in that cold weather. So we were just like chowing down cup of noodle soup.
That sounds great, actually.
Yeah, it was delicious. Getting all the sodium in, getting the calories in, getting some carbs in, also hydrating all at the same time. But at some point we did kind of feel like maybe the nutrition was making us a little more fatigued than we would have been if we were able to keep on the same plan from the very beginning. So it's something that I would definitely urge people to practice even more. Just into the ground. You just want to make sure that you just keep practicing and practicing and practicing so much. You mean, get sick of it. It doesn't matter, but you have to train your gut for that kind of a situation.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's tough to train. It's not nice to train for that. And as you say, then on race day, just as you guys experienced, like I've had times where I've run races where suddenly I've had gut issues, I guess just through nerves, because I'm doing everything else the same as I do in my long run dress rehearsals. Very hard to prepare for, but sounds like you made the best of it.
What's your go-to nutrition when you're running ultras? You've never told me.
Yeah, it's pretty much gels. I mean, I haven't run real ultras for years, but it was pretty much gels. I'm trying to think. And then usually towards the end, I would start to nibble on the whatever appealed in the aid stations.
Yeah.
The last ultra I did was, I don't know if I told you this. I did one in lockdown, just like not round our house, but round our neighborhood. I did 100 kilometers just like one day out of pure boredom. And it was gels, but the day before I made a huge pot of chili con carne, which is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I would just like every 3 or 4 hours just do a loop and come back to my house and stop and see the kid, which is one kid at the time, and I know rushing because I'm on the clock, just have a little bowl of chili con carne, use the bathroom and move on again. So yeah, actually in ultras I've never been that bad.
Oh, you're one of the lucky ones. I don't know many ultras that can say that.
Yeah, well, I haven't done that many ultras either, so I'm sure it's just a matter of time, Katelyn.
Well, we'll see when we do the coastal challenge together.
Yeah, it's not on the
on our bucket
yet, but
list.
It's on the bucket list. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so nutrition issues, and then what came next? The weather issues, was that about the same time?
Yeah, it was about the same time. And it's funny because 100 milers are always like this. Like I think you're rarely going to say that you go through a 100 miler without any blips. It's just what the blips are going to be.
Yeah.
So in this case, we got caught. This was crazy. I was not expecting this. And I loved listening to the locals because they were like, wow, we haven't had a day of rain like this in I don't know in how many months. And we're like, no, we brought the rain. I don't know from where, but we brought the rain. So we were running and it was starting to get dark and it started to rain and it started to hail, like freezing ice. So, stopped, put on the waterproof jackets right away. We had to be really, really prepared. We were prepared because it was a cloudy day. Of course, Thomas, the days before and the days after were bright sunshine and warm and gorgeous. The day of the race, it's cloudy. So we're kind of like had the jackets available, putting it on, taking it off, putting it on, taking it off, because we just really wanted to make sure we didn't get too cold. That was our biggest, that was our plan. So it starts raining and hailing and getting very dark. And we're going to go through this, and we're going through this single track and we're just getting pummeled and it is freezing. And then the water is pooling on the trails. So you don't have a choice except to go through the puddles. So now, feet are soaked and freezing. And we're just like, and I told Michael on the podcast, Michael wrote me a message 2 days before the race, and he said something in that message that stuck with me. And I mentioned this on the podcast we did this week about Berlin. He said, Katelyn, be who you are on the trails and be relentless. And it stuck with his message stuck with me. And at that moment, through like an hour of that torrential rainstorm in the dark, trying to navigate on a trail, I just kept using what he said as a mantra. I was just like, relentless, and I was saying it out loud. And I was leading a train of people through this storm.
Cool.
But behind me, and I was just going relentless, 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 and I just kept saying it. It must have been a couple hundred times, because at that point, that was one of the points where I said, no, this is ridiculous. If I'm going to get freezing cold, I'm really wet. What if I get hypothermia? I don't know. I don't run a lot in the cold. So, I haven't been in the cold since I, lived in Boston over 20 years ago. So it's been a long time for me to be used to this. So I just thought, put everything on that I have. I had waterproof pants, I had a waterproof jacket, and I just said, okay, just keep my head down and keep going and get this whole train behind me through this storm. So I kind of also felt like a bit of responsibility.
Yeah, maybe.
Which helped, I think.
Yeah, maybe that pushed you through a bit, feeling like you were leading the pack out of this terrible storm.
Yeah. I didn't really notice it at the time, but when we got to the road right before that aid station, one of the gentlemen who I guess had been on the train, because it was very dark and I didn't see anyone who was behind me. It was Jonathan, who said, "Hey, you've got some more guys here, just running right behind us. So keep going, keep holding it. You're doing great." And one of the gentlemen said to me when we were on the road and we're all running together, he said, "Hey, you did exactly what you needed to do. Great job. Like, thanks for getting us through that." I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. I'm glad I could, because my head wanted me to quit, but my body was just like, no, just keep. We're doing this. Let's just keep going.
Well, I don't know if you've ever been in that gentleman's shoes, but I've been in that guy's shoes where I've been really suffering in an ultra, but there's been somebody like 50 meters ahead of me that I'm like, I feel like there's a bit of string attached to us. I'm like, I'm not going to let that piece of string get longer. Like, just a psychological thing. I'm like, you're pulling me along. And it is a big boost, a big mental boost, kept you going.
Yeah. It was great. So it worked out. So we got through the rainstorm, and Jonathan and I were looking at each other and we were saying, wow, even though we have the right gear, because we do have the right gear, that doesn't stop you from getting soaked. I mean, we didn't have waterproof shoes. I mean, we're not going to, you know what I mean? And even so, the water's going to get through the socks. And, we were wet and we were cold. And it was, in the middle of the night. And we said, okay, then we're getting down to the big aid station. We're getting halfway. We're going to go in there, grab our drop bags, dry off, take the time that we need, be patient, take the time, dry off, completely change, because there were bathrooms there. It was all inside. Go back out dry, and let's just hope that the rain has stopped. And if the rain has stopped, then we're going to start the second half of the race completely dry, new clothes. I brought everything. I brought, more, another waterproof jacket. I brought a complete change of clothes, running shoes, socks, everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we get there. We make it through this crazy storm. By the way, at the beginning of the storm, up until this point, Victor was also running with us.
Okay.
Which was super fun. He was also part of the train, but as I mentioned in the other pod, Victor, once we got into the storm, he kind of kept looking back at us and like checking on me, and then it was kind of that look like, yeah, you guys are going too slow for me. I'm taking off, and he just took off, and we never saw him again.
Not even a word said between you.
He said he will, if he talks to you about this, Thomas, he says that he like said goodbye, but maybe we just didn't hear him through the hail.
Right.
I don't know what it was. But that pesky hail. So he just like took off at that point. But it was really nice because we did run pretty much the first 40 kilometers with him. Yeah. So, with the three of us, it was like, strength in numbers there. That was really, really great. Yeah, but that was helpful.
One thing I have been wondering was, I was going to ask about Victor, if Victor had time goals and how he ended up going relative to you, but also running is a twosome, an ultra. For me, it just sounds like a recipe for stress. Like I would probably start to get really annoyed with the other person. Probably says more about me than... I think you would be the perfect ultra running partner, actually, because you would just be happy and pull me along. But I don't know if there's any stories you or Jonathan want to share. Did it ever get like, Jonathan, maybe you're on your own for this one, or were you guys in it for thick and thin?
That's actually a really good question. And you're absolutely right, because I think a lot of people would get on each other's nerves. And we had mentioned this before the race, because we are like thick as thieves. I mean, we're running partners. We're super friends. We all do a ton of stuff together. And so I said, I'm a little worried about this because I don't want us to, get upset at each other throughout the race. And I have to be honest, it was like the perfect running match, because when I had a low point and I was acting a little like, let's say, bratty, he would just, he wouldn't play into it. He would just, he would do exactly what you're supposed to do. I would say, I'm freezing cold. Why don't we just stay here? Obviously I would never do that, but your mind, once it's the next morning or something, and you've been running for 18 hours without stopping, and you just start saying stupid things. And I was like, I think I'm just going to sit here and like curl up and rest for a little bit. And he's like, why don't, if you want to get out of the race, why don't you just wait till the next aid station? He would say super smart things because he knew I was never going to DNF out of the race. I was pulling him along. And then there was one time, we were in kilometer 135. We had run through the entire night up these rock ridges, trying to navigate our way without really being able to see. Watches died. That was another detail. Watches died, so we really had to rely on the reflective tape that was somewhere on these ridges that we kind of had to navigate to. So we get to this aid station and we need to eat something, and it's about 5 a.m. It's still pitch black, and Jonathan is shivering, like his teeth are just chattering, and I'm like, okay. Yeah, we can't stop. We can't. And he's like, no, I think this is it for me. I think I'm going to stay here. I think I'm going to, I think it's been too much. I'm too cold. And I'm like, Jonathan, yes, you're cold. I'm a little cold. Okay, let's sit 2 minutes. Let's get you warmed up just for 2 minutes. That's all we have. By the fire, drink some broth, and the sun is going to be up in 15 minutes, or it was like 6 a.m. The sun is coming up in 15 minutes. It's going to be light. You're going to feel rejuvenated. I am getting you to that finish line. And he'll say it. That's exactly what I said to him. Like, I'm getting you to that finish line because I saw that there was clearly no there wasn't a risk. It was like the moments I've had when I just
Yeah.
say, no, I just want to stop because this is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I knew that I could push him through. And he was like, and I was like, no, let's just go. Let's go. Let's go. So we just heated up for a couple minutes, had something to eat, ran right out of there. And after that, it was we had some tougher times, but that was like kind of the dire moment where I said, nope, let's just go. He wanted to get out. Let's keep going. I had moments like that too, but luckily, running together in our case helped us rather than hurt us. He picked me up when I was down. I picked him up when he was down. And it was really this great back and forth of like, no, let's do this. We are going to do this together. But we also have a very similar fitness level. So that's why it was going to work out. Now, if you're, it's better to maybe run your own race if you don't want to run with someone who maybe is a lot faster than you and is going to pull you along and burn you out, or vice versa, where you're going to take a lot longer than you should because you're waiting for someone that's also not that great. So I think it's important that when you do choose that person to run with, that you make sure that your fitness level is very similar. So that's not another factor that you need to worry about while you're running.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are basically the perfect running pair, which is very unusual. I don't, in races and stuff, barely ever come across like a pair like this that just accompany each other and support each other perfectly. But I wanted to ask, because I think one of the reasons I actually enjoy ultras is it's like a massive personal challenge. Yeah. And do you feel is there ever a sense of you running with a partner that it almost robs you of this? It's like you're testing yourself to see if Katelyn can get through this on her own. And if you're going with somebody else, does that make sense? Is that something you miss, or not at all?
No, absolutely. I can absolutely see that. I can see where people would say, I want to run this on my own because I want to know that I can do it just by myself. And that's perfect. And I really respect that. And there are a lot of races, even presently, that I end up running by myself. I'm not always running with someone else. If it works out that way, just on a whim, that's great. The 100-miler was planned because it was like, okay, this is going to be really tough. And, people, almost every single runner that I saw had a pacer. Okay. So, yeah, there was actually very few. I almost did not see any runner in the second half of the race who didn't have someone running with them who had a pacer bib. So I think that it was actually a race where you did not see hardly any solo runners out there. Almost everyone picked up a pacer about halfway through or wherever they were able to. But I totally see what you're saying, Thomas. And yeah, I think there are a lot of people who want to say, no, I could do this completely on my own. Maybe I don't feel like I'm super proud like that. I would rather have, maybe I would just rather kind of have a more
ego.
Fun time. No. I think that it's really cool to say, I did this absolutely all by myself, because maybe some people will say that, oh, well, they ran together, so they're helping each other out. But I might say that to all the people, and this is I'm actually saying this not as a knock. I'm saying it as a knock on myself and all the people who had running poles in this race. I did not have running poles. Yeah, I feel like I needed running poles.
I think you mentioned this in another podcast, and that most other people had running poles, right?
I saw everyone had running poles except Victor, Jonathan, and I. And at the end of the race, we were like, well, aren't we the silly ones? Because we could have really used those running poles. So I think I want to practice and learn to run with running poles, because speaking of having some help, I feel like those would have really helped me out on some of those steep climbs after a 140K, when you're just like trying to trek through the last leg of the race.
Yeah, I've never used them extensively or taken them on an ultra, but I've got a pair in Scotland, actually, and they're telescopic, so they can kind of disappear, and they're super light. But I think you do need to train with them. I think if you just turned up with them one day in an ultra and tried to run down a mountain with them, you might trip over or something.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that's why we didn't bring them, because I have never trained with them. I just haven't felt like I've kind of felt like I don't like to hold something. I like
Yeah.
to have my hands free. Maybe it's because I'm very clumsy. I did fall a few times during the race. So I guess, but perhaps if I had the pole, I could have held the poles out and they would have broken my fall. So maybe they would have helped me a lot more than I thought.
And just out of curiosity, the other runners that you saw with poles, did they run with poles throughout, or was it more in the second half they leaned on them?
No, I saw people from the very beginning
Yeah.
because the beginning was such a tough, steep
Oh yeah,
trek.
yeah. The straight up the
Yeah.
hill. Yeah, fair
So
enough.
I didn't really see anybody put them away. Like I always saw everyone with running poles and I'm like, wow, I'm really behind the times here. I need to get with it. I mean, I've seen my girl Courtney and all the pros, they all use running poles. Why have I not tried this before? And I feel like this race really showed me that in a 100 miler with that much elevation gain and just your body getting so tired that they may have helped me. Even if they helped me, I don't know, 5%, it would have
Yep.
been something that would have made my experience even more positive.
Yeah, I think I can imagine just to lean on them during the more technical stuff in the second half of the race when you're getting tired would
Yep.
just help out a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
so.
I wanted to ask you about the sort of mental game, the mindset stuff, because you've wrote a lot of articles about this type of stuff, and you've read a lot of the research on it. And I sometimes hear stuff about mantras or about visualization, and I think mumbo jumbo. But when you talked right now about your mantra that Michael inadvertently gave you, I was like, yeah, I could actually see that playing out. Was there anything else you prepared or used during the race, just in terms of mental tricks when you're in the depths of an ultra?
Mm, that's a really good question because I actually didn't even plan that mantra. That kind of just popped up without even using mantras before. And and it was so helpful and I couldn't believe it because it just organically happened during
Mhm.
that part of the race. I think that I do use visualization and I use just what every single person thinks about when they're doing visualization. I think about crossing the finish line. I think about how am I going to feel when I cross that finish line? How am I going to feel, that sense of accomplishment, that sense of, excitement that I did this, I could do this. I can't believe I ran for over 24 hours. This is insanity. Like, I'm just going to feel super strong and just thinking about finishing the race. Thinking about eating? Is that a weird thing? Thinking about what I'm going to eat after the race gets very
No,
exciting.
I was going to say, I think I do visualization wrong because I think about weird things to eat that I start to crave. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go to the shop and buy this as soon as I finish.
Yeah.
That's my
No, no, no. It's
visualization, I
not
guess.
weird. It's not weird. It's completely what I do. I think about what I'm going to do after. I'm like, oh, I was thinking, all I want to do is take a hot shower because it was just so cold.
Yeah.
I want to just take a really hot shower, get under a blanket, and eat like a chicken sandwich and French fries. And just hang out. That's what I was thinking of after crossing the finish line because I was so cold and I was so hungry and I wanted French fries really bad.
It's a tangent, but there's something in the UK called Angel Delight. I'm just going to see what it's called in the US. I'll edit this out
Okay.
if it does make sense. Angel Delight. Is it something you've heard of? Do
No,
you know
what
what
is
it is?
it? Well, maybe.
It's
No, I
it's
don't
this
know. Tell me.
stuff that it's this stuff that we used to get when we were kids, and it's this dry. It's like sugar powder. It's kind of like Nesquik. You mix it with milk, and then it sets to make this dessert. And I did a stage race in Namibia, and from like halfway, like from day 3, all I could think about was finishing, going to a supermarket and buying Angel Delight, something I hadn't eaten in like 15 years, and I did it. I went to
That's
and I
so
bought like
funny.
a 2 pints of milk and this dry powder and just poured it in outside this supermarket in Swakopmund in Namibia and sat and had Angel Delight.
That is so funny. Is it like pudding? Is it like a pudding
Yeah, it's like a
consistency?
pudding. That's it. It's just
Okay.
like milk plus
Okay.
powder equals pudding. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But see, isn't
There you
that
go.
funny how you just crave those kind of things? And I do think about, and I think about the very simple things in life that we take for granted, or just like that warm shower, that hot
Yeah.
shower, and like changing out of my wet clothes and being, comfy in PJs and just, hanging out, watching watching NFL on Sunday the next day, like all comfortable and be like, I did it. I ran it, eating yummy food, having a few glasses of kava, which is my favorite thing to celebrate with. So I was just visualizing all that fun stuff and then being able to sit around and talk with all the people in the running club, and they could tell me their stories about how they were able to accomplish their race. So I think all of those things got me through. And, there's also kind of that pressure where I feel, Coach Katelyn, all of my athletes following me and thinking, okay, here she is. She's at this point. She's at this point. And, later on I saw the chat and they had been following me. And imagine if I, hadn't finished the race, or so their kind words and excitement and knowing that they were wondering where I was and worrying about me. Also, those vibes gave me a lot of motivation and a lot of inspiration to get to the finish line.
I wanted to ask you, as you're getting towards the end of the race, because I was following your splits, and it's somewhere like mile 80 or mile 85. It looked like you were super slow and like loads of people were passing you getting through a certain checkpoint. It was like, where is she? She should have been there 2 hours ago. But then I think maybe this time that they had recorded you go through the previous checkpoint was like erroneous by 2 hours or something like that. So I wanted to ask you about that, but also just like, how did those final stages go?
Yeah, I think what happens is I think the races try to do the absolute best they can with the tracking. And I've also followed people before in ultras, and I've gotten really nervous because like they just don't. It just doesn't show up, or something gets mixed up. And so I think that, when people do follow ultras, I always tell them, take everything with a grain of salt, because, it's really tricky out there in the mountains to have things upload. And, you have these amazing volunteers coming, and as you're coming through, they're asking for your number, they're writing it down, and then they're probably bringing it to someone to upload it onto the site, to input the information. I can't imagine how much work that must be, to get it right, especially out there in hailstorms. So we did have to do a lot of walking at the end of the race. We kind of just felt like our muscles weren't responding that well, and we were kind of throwing that on to the nutrition situation. Like, absolutely. We knew it, and we were power walking pretty well, but when we would try to run, we would just feel tons of pain. So, and that had never happened to me in an ultra before, and a 100-miler before. So I kind of chalked it all up to the nutrition. And I was like, well, all right, perfect. Next time, once I get my nutrition in check, I mean, I haven't run a 100-miler in almost 10 years, so to me, it was almost like I was running it again for the first time. Because once it's been that long, I mean, you have some experience there and you remember some stuff, but your body or your mind hasn't gone through that experience in 10 years. I kind of felt like, well, you know what? This is another new experience for me too. And now if I were to do another one, I would change A, B, C, and D. So the last 10 kilometers was a very steep downhill down like the ski slope.
Okay. Yeah.
It was brutal. And it was crazy because we were power walking down the hill and doing this little like jog, power walk. And I'm going to be honest with you, not that many people, I don't even think more than a handful of people passed us, if you can imagine. So everyone at that point was kind of in the same state, I would say. And everyone was moving at about the same speed because we were, I thought, wow, probably a ton of people are going to come past us here because we're kind of walking, jogging down this hill. And no, a few people did, but we were just really excited to get there. And we thought, okay, we got 10K to go. Like, come on, we've done 155 kilometers because it ended up being like 165. We got 10K to go. Let's just push through. And at that point, we were smiling and laughing and having a great time. And we're like, okay, we know we look terrible, but we're happy. Like, if you see the videos, I have to send you all the videos and the photos because we have a lot. When Victor was running with us in the beginning of the race, Victor is like the 100-miler goat I mean, I'm just like, are you kidding me? He was videoing us. He was like, oh, do you guys want a video here? I'm just trying to run the race. I'm just like, Victor is like, he's on another level. I'm just trying to run the race, and Victor's snapping photos, videos. We have beautiful videos through the trails. And Victor was also waiting for us at the end. He had come in like 4 hours beforehand.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's waiting at the finish line, and he took this great video of us. And I mean, I was one of those people that you say, wow, she had a rough time.
Really?
But that's
right.
okay.
We need,
Yeah.
we can maybe patch the video over this part of the podcast. That would be cool. I need to see it now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because I've got, us running through. Our smiles are ear to ear, Thomas. Like, we couldn't be happier. But the extremely slow shuffle just looks so painful on both of us sides. It's a great video.
Great. Right. We'll get it onto this video. That'll be good. So
yeah,
what so you crossed the finish line. What was the feeling there? Was there any regret, anything, or was it just the pure catharsis that you usually feel at the end of an ultra?
Yeah, it was, it's crazy because you're running these ultras, you're running these 100-milers, and you're saying to yourself, I mean, how many times during an ultra do most people say, why am I doing this? This is fun. Why do I sign up for this? I'm paying to run this race and do all this suffering. And then you get to the finish line and you're like, oh, that's why. Like, that is why. The community of trail running, testing your limits, it's just like being able to see what you can do. All of the negative moments throughout the race, or all of the down times that you have, and how these trails like humble you, right, in such a way. And you get to the finish line and you're like, no, it was absolutely all worth it. It was worth it. I was so proud of everyone. I was proud of Jonathan, proud of Victor, always just being just the GOAT, like I said, of 100-milers, proud of the other runners in the running club who also went through the finish line. It was just a really, really amazing finish and a wonderful, I'd like to say day, but it was over a day.
Yeah, it's true. I think there's something about, like, the more stuff you go through and the deeper you go, the better the feeling at the other side, which is why ultras are in their own league in terms of, don't want to say they're addictive, but the feeling of accomplishment you can get from achieving an ultra, even if at whatever pace you're going.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, when you hit 100-milers, at least the way that I run, I mean, you really never know what your result is going to be. I mean, I wasn't thinking of that for this race per se, but also we've seen it in UTMB. Like, you never know who's going to win. Last year when not this year, but last year, it was like the underdog who ran on the men's side, or he wasn't even on the list of the starting elites.
Yeah.
Like, in an ultra, in a 100-miler, anything can happen to anyone out there. It's unpredictable. And so your goal should just be go out there, finish, be patient, and just have the best time. And sometimes the most patient people, and if you take things in stride, your race will go much better than maybe for someone who was trying to push from the beginning and blew up at mile 60.
I think that's it. I think it's so much more strategic.
Yeah.
I almost, because I did a lot more ultras than I did shorter runs, shorter races, like 10 years ago, then got into the shorter stuff. But I see the shorter stuff as almost like a refined art. There's almost a formula to most of it. Obviously, you get marathons that have got different elevation profiles and things like that. But it's so well established now. There's a pretty well-known way to train for these things, to pace for these things, fuel for these things. I'm not saying things don't go wrong, but you've got a pretty good idea how you can do. The more you do these, and the better you get at it. But ultras are just a different game, and I think that's part of the appeal psychologically for a lot of people. Is just it's not about getting a specific position, a specific time. it's kind of pushing yourself into some totally unknown situation. So much of the prep isn't actually physical either. I don't know if you want to talk about that. It's mental, it's strategic.
Oh yeah, I mean, your physical fitness can get you to the start line, but your mind to me gets you to the finish line.
Yeah.
The mental game gets you to the finish line. Like, yeah, of course your body has to be there. You have to be really well trained. But at the end of the day, 100 milers they get so much in your head, and your mind can fail you so easily. So that's why you have to have those tactics to be able to pull yourself out of those dark places. And what I do want to mention is when you're running these ultras, don't worry, you will come back out of that dark space. Like, there are ups and downs throughout the whole time, but you always bounce back. I mean, in our case, some of the moments I could think of is, okay, when we got dry and we changed our clothes, we were like reborn.
Yeah.
When the sun came up the next day and we got out of that aid station and we saw light and it was morning, we were like starting all over again when we hit the last 10K and we're like, we're going to finish. So it was like, it's these amazing peaks and valleys. I didn't mean to say that, not to be cliche with trail running, but it is literally just peaks and valleys of emotions. And you know that when you're in one of those down spots, you will always get back out. So don't kind of give up down there. You know, you think of that mantra, this too shall pass, because it will, and you'll bounce back and you'll have a great time. Just make sure you're always fueling, make sure you're always hydrating, and that of course you're prepared, but you'll get there.
Yeah, I always try and remind myself like how temporary it actually is when you're in the depths of one of these things and you start to get the idea of, maybe at the next aid station, I could just stop because
Yeah.
this is really, really tough. It feels like there's a huge gulf between you and the finish line, but in the grand scheme of like your life or your year, if you can just keep going, the end result and the payoff you get for months later, just mentally from actually completing one of those things is such a motivator.
It really is. You know what was funny, Thomas, is that at the finish line, I was excited. I was super happy. I was smiling. And the days after, we were all talking about it and going over and over every detail about the race. And until today, this is actually strange. I wasn't planning on sharing this, but I'm thinking of it now. Today, I went out for a run. I had gone out for a couple of very short walk jogs this week to just see how I was feeling, making sure everything was fine. I feel like I'm in great condition. Nothing hurts. I feel wonderful. So I went out for a run today, but I went by myself, and I was running down this hill outside my house to get to the main road. And I just started getting really choked up, and the tears just came into my eyes because I hadn't cried or gotten emotional about the race. And now that it's 1 week later, it's exactly 1 week later, I started to get really choked up and I couldn't breathe for a second. And I was just thinking about, oh my gosh, I finished a 100 miler and it finally hit me. It took a week, but it finally hit me. So like you're saying, what you think about, weeks or months later, I mean, I got emotional until today and really emotional.
Yeah.
And I felt like, wow, my gosh, I can't believe I did this. I can't believe we did this. It's such an amazing feat. Am I going to do another one?
Yeah, it is. It's a different mental game than marathons in terms of how it leaves you during it and afterwards. It's almost like a huge amount of like emotional life compressed into like the ultra and the days after it, especially like a huge amount of your whatever the kind of emotional development that you might go through in a year kind of compressed into like one crazy event when you're on a mountain for 30 hours with a buddy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you mentioned you're just back running. So physically, what was it like in the hours and days after the race, and what's that going to look like in terms of getting back and running?
Yeah, first couple of days walking was a challenge for everyone, as it usually is, because once you stop, your body just decides to get really stiff. So that first night, it was tricky to sleep, as it usually is for me after ultras, because you're just uncomfortable. I didn't
Hmm.
have pain per se, but I was very uncomfortable. Just everything kind of hurts. I was joking with my friends, like the tip of my nose hurts. Like, and actually I didn't notice until the day after, but it was literally like, it had burned from the cold underneath.
Hmm.
So it actually turned, it actually scabbed. I couldn't see it because it was on the very under part of my nose. And I said, from the tip of my nose to the tip of my toes, everything is kind of just sore. Um, we hobbled around. I did not run or think about cross training or anything, of course. For 3 full days, it was just like resting and walking some places. I got back home. And then on the 4th day, I said, okay, well, maybe I'm just going to go out like for a nice walk and, just kind of test the body out, like a walk jog for a couple days. And I thought, okay, this is amazing. I feel like my body is completely intact. I cannot complain. I have no pain. I don't have any more soreness. I got a sports massage. I feel really good. What I feel still is just tired, like sleepy
Hmm.
and hungry.
Well, you've got a good
Those were the
excuse to
2
sleep and
biggest
eat a lot
things.
more, so you
Yeah,
take advantage.
exactly. It
Yeah.
was that more than anything. Like I just felt really tired, like fatigued, but no muscle pain or anything like that. So I've just been trying to get really good night's sleep, now that I'm feeling good. And just if my body's asking for me to eat and I'm just getting hungrier more often than usual, I'm just eating because it's just I feel like my body is still asking me to kind of help it out a little bit.
Right. Okay, well, last question is, looking into your ultra running future, do you think you would go back to the 100 miler after this experience? Is it too soon to ask?
I think if you had asked me that day, I
Yeah.
would have said no.
Yeah.
Um, because I thought, okay, I could just leave it at that. Like I'm fine leaving it at that. But, these friends who have now run their 100 milers are already thinking about, okay, guys, what's next? So in another year, should we do another one? And, we can change this, and this, and we can train better. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I could train better and maybe I could, fix all the things, learn how to use poles, train my gut.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
my mind starts reeling and I start thinking, I have to stop saying, never, and never
Hmm.
say never. I just can't say that anymore. I just have to say, well, we'll see. And, we'll make plans. This is the first time in a long time that I don't have my next races lined up. Usually I have stuff a year out all the time, but I wanted to see how this 100 miler was going to go. So my plan for these next couple months are to try to figure out what's next. And if I am going to run another 100 miler, it probably wouldn't be for another year or two, but
Hmm.
I would consider it. I would consider it to go with these great people again and go have another fun full day in the woods.
Yeah, this conversation, you've got me hankering to sign up for another ultra. So who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe not next year, but at some point we should try and do one together. I'm not going to promise to
Yes.
stick with you the whole time. I don't think I'd be as good a buddy as Jonathan, but it could be fun.
Oh, it could be totally fun. Okay, I'm gonna hold you to that, and I want you to look for one. And if I mean, I don't have any race plans right now, so I'm open to
Oh,
any
well,
and all
give me a couple of
ideas.
years to get back into things. I'm not saying we're going to do it anytime soon, but we'll get there.
Perfect. I love it. I would love it. We're gonna
Cool.
get Alex. We're gonna get Alex to run a marathon, and then because we've all joked that we're all gonna run London together. That's our plan. And Alex told us that he's gonna pull a Victor, and he's gonna say peace out, and he's just gonna leave us at the marathon. He's not gonna run with us at all.
Yeah, Alex in a marathon. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah, London would be a good one. Okay, well, Katelyn, thanks very much.